Hey hockey fans, LB here, and today I'm going to make some homemade granola. So come and join me in the kitchen. I'm going to go through it at the same time as you, so there'll be no rushing or anything. So yeah, follow along. So just to start with, it's pretty basic. And the good thing about granola is that you can literally use whatever you've got, and there's no real rules or regulations around granola. It generally should always work out. And yeah, basically you don't really have to go out and buy too much from the shops. It's always good to just try and use whatever kind of granola ingredients you have got at home. So I'm going to show you what I've got at home, but by no means do you need to have all of these ingredients. And I'll explain what ones are sort of essential and then not really. Okay, so to begin with, we've got I would say probably quite essential is oats. We want to have some oats. Although if you're gluten-free, feel free to just omit the oats, or you might be able to find some gluten-free oats. And then I really like to add a lot of coconut. So I'm going to add some desiccated coconut and some shredded coconut. So two different types of coconut. Next up, we're sort of already at any kind of non-essential or sort of choose your own adventure kind of ingredients. So I've got here pumpkin seeds. I've got chia seeds. I've also got linseeds I just found in the kitchen. I don't really know when else I'd use them, so now's a good time for granola. I've got almonds, I've got cashews, and then on the really odd spectrum of random things you can add, buckwheat kernels are really good to add. They add this like crunch, it's delicious. And I found some puffed quinoa, but as I said, please don't go out and collect all of these ingredients. You don't really need all of them. You just would need like half. If your favorite nuts are macadamias and walnuts, chuck them in. If you like sunflower seeds, put them in. If you don't like coconut, leave the coconut out. That's the really good thing about granola. Basically, you just make a bowl of nut and fruit goodness, and then we add some liquid, and then we mix it all together, and then it goes in. I'm so sorry, before I begin, put your oven onto probably around 190, fan forced, not grill. And put that on now, so then while we make our granola, it's easy to chuck in. So yeah, basically how I'm gonna start is, I don't even really measure it out, sorry, but I just sort of put in what kind of amounts of things I wanna have in my bowl. So I'll try and give you some rough estimates, but I reckon I put in like a cup of oats. Here's my desiccated coconut, and as I said, I love coconut, so I'll put like maybe 3/4 of a cup of that in, half a cup of that in. That was our desiccated coconut. And now I've got my shredded coconut, and I might also put in half a cup of that. Great. I really like pumpkin seeds, so I'm gonna add them. Maybe also half a cup, but also depends on how much you actually wanna make. Like sometimes without measuring, I'll end up making like 2 whole trays of granola, and other times I just make a little batch. Chia seeds is also really good. Great for the protein. Chuck some of them in. Maybe like a tablespoon. Okay, this is where I'm gonna add my buckwheat kernels, but honestly, don't need to add these. These just add like a nice little crunch. Maybe half a cup of them. I think, I shouldn't be saying this, but potentially buckwheat is gluten-free. I'm not sure. Disclaimer, I'm not a nutritionist. But they might be a good substitute if you're allergic to oats. Also, I know that sometimes people put in quinoa flakes. This is puffed quinoa. Maybe the same thing. Well, it's all quinoa, I suppose, but anyway. I'll put a bit of that in. Not too much, unless, good thing about puffed quinoa, it's also like puffed rice. Feel free to chuck that in if you sort of like that rice bubbles kind of texture. Okay, next up we've got our nuts. Clearly, if you're nut-free, do not put these in. I like to sort of roughly chop mine, sorry. Yep, so I like to chop up my nuts just because I don't like having a whole almond or 3 or 4 almonds in one spoonful. I prefer to have a few slivers. So I'm just going to roughly chop these almonds. But as I said earlier, whatever your favorite nut is, chuck that one in there. You've got the luxury of having some good macadamias at home. Pecans can be really good. They go quite well in sweet food, so feel free to add some pecans. Also, walnuts could be quite nice. Or, honestly, no nuts is also fine, because the nuts add a good crunch, but you sort of, because we're cooking the granola, we also get a crunch from that too, because it's all cooked. So I'm going to put my almonds in there. Great. lastly, so there's sort of all of the dry ingredients I spoke about. You can add dried fruit. So I really like sultanas in mine. You can cut up dates, put them in, maybe cut up some dried apricots, put them in, maybe some dried apple. The thing you just need to be wary of when you put in dried fruit is that when you cook it in the oven, sometimes if it's too high, then the dried fruit can actually burn, and then, well, it's not too bad, but one time I ended up with these like crispy burnt sultanas amongst my deliciously cooked granola. So I think it's because the fruits, they cook a bit quicker than the rest of the granola. So if you are gonna put in some fruit, maybe decrease your temperature, or I'm not gonna decrease my temperature, I'm a bit impatient, but I will sort of watch my granola a bit more closely just because I know that I don't want my dried fruit to burn. So I'm just gonna put a bit in. Okay, great. Put that over there. Okay, and now we're just gonna mix with a spoon all of these dry ingredients. Nothing should really be sticking to one another yet. It just should look like a bit of a raw, natural muesli, I suppose. Potentially, this could be a raw muesli if you don't want to cook it or anything. This would probably be quite nice on some yogurt, but definitely keep following along because I think it gets a bit better. So this is what I've got at the moment. Yum, yum, yum. Next up, I am going to add some spices. Well, I'm just gonna add cinnamon, some salt, and that's sort of all for now. Don't overdo on the salt, but salt can actually be really good. And maybe half a teaspoon of cinnamon. That might be enough. Great. I'm gonna mix that together now. Okay, so basically there's dry mix done. Now we need to get our sweeteners and our the thing which is gonna combine it. So I like to use coconut oil. This is where sort of, because we actually haven't measured how much has gone into the bowl, you don't really know how much liquid to pour in, so I just sort of have a bit of a guessing game going on. So I'm going to melt my coconut oil in the microwave. Shouldn't take too long. And then I'm gonna choose between what sweetener I'm gonna use. So there's so many sweeteners out there. You can have no sweeteners if you don't want to have too sweet of a granola. Or you can have, I like to often use rice malt syrup, but also good old honey can also be used. Maple syrup can also be used. So yeah, basically don't worry about like going out and shopping for all these specific things. Just use whatever you've got at home. To begin with, I might just add like 1/3 of a cup of rice malt syrup, maybe 1/4 of a cup. I'm not going to measure it out, sort of just guessing. Okay, that looks good. Or maybe a bit more. Okay, oh, that's enough. Yeah, cool. Great, and that's gonna go into the bowl. It's sort of gonna stick to the bowl clearly, but when we add in our coconut oil, you can put that in here. Great, so this is melted. So I sort of only had maybe, I'm gonna say 1/2 a cup left. So maybe I'll also pour in 1/3 of a cup. Oh, that might do. I'm gonna add a dash of vanilla, or actually maybe a capful, so that's like a teaspoon of vanilla. And then in my bowl I'm just going to mix that together. So with the warm coconut oil, it will end up sort of helping to mix it all together. So I've basically tried to go on a 1-to-1 ratio. So depending on how much granola you've got, I've sort of added 1/4 to 1/2 of a cup of coconut oil and 1/4 and 1/2 of a cup to the rice malt syrup. This generally doesn't make the granola too sweet, so if you prefer sweeter granola, just add some more sweetener. Okay, so I've mixed that all together, and I'm now gonna pour that over my granola. Now it might not be enough. I generally make a bit less to begin with, mix it around, and then so we're gonna put all of our liquid into here. And then we're going to mix that around our granola. So as I said, if you're finding that like it's reaching a bit of the granola, but then a lot of it is still sort of in its natural state and hasn't really hit any liquid yet, then you might want to add a bit more coconut oil. So I've sort of noticed, you know, mine could do with a bit more liquid. So rather than putting it into the bowl, I'm just going to pour a bit more coconut oil over the top. Great. And still keep mixing. And by now, with the vanilla which has gone in and the coconut oil. Should be smelling really good. Okay, great. This is what I've currently got. What mine's looking like. It's all quite sort of starting to stick together, but not like overly liquidy. Okay, and then on a prepared tray with baking paper, I'm just going to spread out my granola. I've got quite a big tray, so I'm just gonna do it all in one batch, but if you've happened to made like a lot of granola and you don't have a very big tray, just chuck it on 2 trays, or just put one batch in, reserve the other, and then once it's cooked, chuck in another batch. Okay, so mine, I would say, is looking quite dry, which is still fine. It will still toast and everything, but potentially don't worry if yours is looking a bit more liquidy than this. Okay, don't want to get everything off the spoon, don't want to waste anything. Okay, so here's our granola. Now, because I added in a bit more coconut oil, I'm thinking, maybe it's not sweet enough, and I always like to do this at the end anyway. I'll grab my honey and I'll just do like a zigzag drizzle across the whole thing. Now, this is definitely not essential, but can make some delicious like honey crispy crunches on top. So depending on how much of this you want to do. Okay, great. So here we've got our granola ready to go into the oven. As I said, if you have got your dried fruit in here, probably just take a bit more care and time in how long you leave it for. You might want to decrease the temperature just a bit. I might look at this after like 5-7 minutes. When it starts getting golden, grab a spoon and mix it around, just so that then the underneath can also get a bit toasted. And yeah, just cook it until it's toasted. Nothing in here actually needs to be cooked. Like, it's not like there's eggs or anything. Like, we could just eat this now. So it's not like crucial that it needs to be cooked to a certain level, just whatever level you like your granola to look at. So yeah, good luck. Hopefully these instructions were helpful, and enjoy your granola on your acai bowl, yogurt, crumble, or just like honestly eating it out of the jar, because that's like what I like to do as well. So yeah, thank you.